Suspension on mountain bikes is a really important area, and with most suspension forks and rear shocks being air sprung, knowing exactly how to get the air into your fork and how much air should be in your fork is quite an important thing to understand. Probably the first thing to do is understand how the air goes in. Generally speaking, you'll have an air cap which unscrews. You have an air pump. Usually with a dial, you need to know exactly how much air is going in. So obviously we have a dial here marked with PSI and bar. And the idea is you screw that down onto the valve. That will then show you how much air there is in this fork, which isn't a great deal. You can then start to put some air into your fork. Okay, now it varies depending on how heavy you are, the type of riding that you're doing, and whether or not it's a fork or a rear shock. Let's just take that off for a moment. But you can see that even adding that little bit of air in there has caused the fork to extend. It's important that you have the fork with enough air in it that you're not losing travel because the fork is not opening out correctly. Traditionally, we have recommended people set forks up using sag, a sag measurement, which is technically putting the O-ring to the bottom of the stanchion, having the rider sit on the bike gently using their body weight, distributed as they would be if they were riding, then to get off the bike, and that will have caused the fork to drop down through its travel a tiny bit, and you'd end up with something like that. Somewhere between a quarter and a third of the travel, depending on whether you're a cross-country rider that liked it firm or a more adventurous rider that liked softer suspension settings. But what we're trying to do now is, instead of sort of having people run sort of rigid sag percentages, is look at how much of the available travel you're actually using. There seems no point in telling somebody to say use a quarter of your total travel as sag and then only ever using 2/3 of the travel. What we're trying to do is to get people to use the travel that they've got. There's no point in having it and not using it on a given ride. So it's a good idea to take the shock pump out with you. Don't be in a hurry to rigidly follow the pressure settings advised by the manufacturers. Obviously it's a good guide, but be looking at how much travel you're using. If you're bottoming out your fork or your rear shock every ride over and over again, you know you're not running enough air, so add some more. But if you're consistently returning home with your O-ring only halfway up the stanchion, then you realise that you could probably do with a little bit less air in there to maximise the amount of travel available to you. Again, it's down to how much feel you want out of it. Okay, that seems about right. If you're looking for more specific information on pressures and guidelines, it's a good idea to head to your specific manufacturer's website, where they'll have a lot of information about starting points and tuning tips. With regards to tuning, most suspension forks come with some form of adjustment, be that just rebound or compression, or rebound and compression, and some even now have a separate lockout adjustment. It's an extremely complex sort of situation to start delving into from a starting point. Suffice to say that obviously your compression control controls how fast your fork compresses when it contacts an object. The rebound controls how fast your fork re-extends back to its static length after that object has been hit. Balancing out your compression rate and your rebound rate so that both are comfortable for you according to how you ride and the terrain that you ride on is what you're looking for. Therefore, it's a good idea to make one adjustment at a time, be that a compression adjustment or a rebound adjustment, and then go and ride your bike through whatever terrain it is that you normally ride on, and try and get a feel for, has that made an effect that you're happy with, or has that taken you further away from an effect that you're happy with. And you need to then make single adjustments one at a time until you get closer and closer to what you consider to be the perfect ride. Make one adjustment at a time, because if you start adjusting something on the compression and on the rebound, it's very quick and easy to lose track of where you are with any one separate adjustment. Certainly, if you get into a real pickle, it's a good idea to go possibly to your local bike shop if you're not completely au fait with exactly what's going on. You should have somebody there who's good at setting up suspension and will be able to give you some good guidelines. But as I say, one adjustment at a time, and ride each adjustment before you make another one is a good place to be.